All right, so we got Venus in the fifth house. So Venus is the planet of attraction, how well you can, cooperate, create relationships. It's, your love energy, attraction energy, right? The way you show love, the way you give it, that kind of thing. The fifth house is the house of creativity, fun, enjoyment, entertainment, recognition, that kind of thing. So when you got Venus there, this is a person who loves doing those kind of things all the time, though. This is the shit that they seek to do from the heart. They seek to please others, entertain other people. You know, they seek to dive deep into their, creative, bag, right? That's what these people like to do. People who have Venus in the fifth house. And that's why they're like great to be around, And again, the fifth house is also about that recognition too, because it's ruled by Leo. Um, that kind of energy. But I'll let you know what it is for each sign if you have each sign there, like I usually do. Just a quick rundown for each of them. So Aries, Venus in the fifth house. This person's a passionate lover, right? They like to be very energetic. They like to be seen by their lover and, do things with their, the people they love and care about, right? They like to do the things they love and care about, though. That's like a main thing, too. See, there's something they like to do. And you know what they like to do. See, that because it's Aries, right? When they love something, this person, no matter what their sign is, their Venus sign is in Aries and it's in the fifth house. You know what they like to do. You know what they are entertained by and all that shit. If you actually love this person and they love you, they're trying to get you involved with it more than likely because they're an extrovert. When it comes to like matters of the heart, so they'll try to get you involved and get you they might even challenge you on some things, but them challenging you to do different things, that's them showing you love, right? And like you actually appreciate that too. And like as a person who's not this person, and people appreciate you, Aries and Ve- Aries Venus in the fifth house, because you are fun and you do challenge them and you do push them to try different things, right? You motivate them to try different things and just do better for themselves. Like why are you here if you are not passionate about something, right? That kind of thing. I want to see that come out of you. You know, you like that coming out of me. I want to see that come out of you. And people like that, and you kind of like lead them in other things too. They like you leading that kind of, and that kind of fun and joyful, experiences. Those type of experiences. They like you leading that. That's where you shine brightest in that way. Um, and you gotta be that though. You have to be that passionate person. When you like something, you gotta like be loud about it. You gotta let motherfuckers know, and like don't even like just do it. Just do whatever the fuck you like to do. And you'll find people like they'll find you. Like people who don't like you will know if they don't like to fuck with you, right? But then the people who like fuck with you and want to be around you, they'll find you. That's easy. You're being loud about it. You're presenting yourself, in a way that they like, and then they just stick around. But you are also, because Aries is detriment in Venus. So you like to, try new things too. You don't always, stick in one thing. You know, you can, entertain this for a while, and you're on to the next thing. And when you're on to the next thing, you're on to the next thing. You'll be pissed if somebody tries to keep you, you know, down or um, tell you to not, like you want to do something else, right? You'll be pissed about it. But these people who truly love you will be all right with it. Oh, now so and so wants to do this. Fine, we're doing that then. Because I know when we do whatever this person with Aries Venus wants to do, we're gonna have fun, no matter what it is. I don't give a fuck what he or she wants to do. We're gonna do that. But these people gotta actually love being around you. And if it's in the fifth house, they probably do love being around you. Whether it's your friends, your close loved ones, whatever. Those kind of people love you. But anyways, the next sign is Taurus Venus in the fifth house. This person is more sensible, more consistent. That's how they love people. They may not be like loud and proud about the shit they do, but when they do something, they try to they like things. All right, these people like material things, so they like to indulge in that kind of stuff. They get into that type of energy. These people have Taurus and Venus in the fifth house. Taurus Venus in the fifth house. So you like to get all the little things you like, the comfortable, shit, like clothes, certain clothes you like to wear. You just have a lot of that. And all the shit you have, it's the shit you like. You don't give a fuck about what other people like. You don't hate that what they value necessarily. You just don't go into that. So this person, let's say you love a certain type of shoe. Let's say you love Air Force Ones, right? And you just love those, and you got like a whole collection of them. And they're like, this is the shit that you indulge in. This is shit that you love. This is you showing yourself self love. You're doing that for yourself, and you do. You know, other people may or may not like it, but the people that like you because you like the things you like. You probably worked hard for the shit you got. They respect you for that kind of thing. They ain't like these other people who would hate you and be like, oh well, you just like things too much. You're too materialistic. It ain't always that. It's not, because you are a person who had to be consistent, had to fucking really grind and really you know push through some things. So of course you like comfort. And you're gonna indulge in that when you can. You're gonna have, the type of bed you like, the type of, cars you want, all that shit. And you really don't give a fuck about what other people think about that. And you like even cool enough to be like, only with the people you're close with. Remember, I know, Taurus Venus, the people you're like, cool with, people you have, interacted with, that have been around for a while. Because you understand the Venus energy, like, for what it is, right? You gotta like spend time with people. You gotta have that connection first before you can do anything like that, right? And you'll allow them to like come over and hang around you and just be around your comfortable, maybe even luxurious space. And these are your friends and people that you see more consistently. Because you love that kind of thing. And then they like you because you're a you know you're a good friend to have, or a good person to have around, for certain people, right? Like, love interests, the people who like love your dick, or love that pussy, right? They come around and they see that stuff, and they're like, I know that this person is going to take care of themselves even when I'm not around. They're going to make sure they have this, have that, have this, have that. And they like you for that, and it makes you make your friends think like that too, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't just put myself second. I should get myself something every once in a while, because this person, my friend so and so, they do that for themselves. They make sure they get themselves the shit they want, because that's the shit they value. The shit you have is the shit you value. you and people actually like you for that. Now there's people who don't like you for that, but then there's people who do, because they ain't seen it as you're a materialistic kind of guy, because you're like, or a girl, you're like, this is what I have, and it ain't like you're flaunting it. It's not you're flaunting it. It's like, here, I'm like, come to my house, and then like people are looking around and they see things and like, oh wow, you have a lot of this, you have a lot of that. you're not one of those kind of people necessarily. Well, you could be one of those kind of people though. If you have a fire sun, if you're like an Aries or some shit like that, and you have Venus in Taurus, you might be like yeah, I got the best this and that, and that's fine too because people still like that about you. You'll just see it as more of a way, a reason to like let them know like vocally, you know, I just I need this stuff. This is the shit I like. This is the shit I like to um, I get pleasure in having these things around me. I like things, and there's nothing wrong with like having things because one, it shows you results, and it shows that you were able to achieve the things you wanted to obtain in this life. You know, now you ain't gonna have that when you go, but it's still like a part of living life. People gotta understand that you gotta live your life and live your life for you, and people like that about you, right? And they do. Your friends do, not people who just hate. But anyways, the next sign is Gemini and Venus in the fifth house. Gemini and Venus in the fifth house, they like to have interesting, witty type of conversations with people. They like to communicate with everybody though, but like these are gossipers too. So they like to talk about people. They talk to this person, they talk to that person. They really don't like keep secrets and shit. But like the people who like them are like cool with them because they are willing to open up and talk to people, right, about different subjects. Certain things they're interested in. And then from there they start getting into different things, you know sexual pleasures, certain kind of ideas they wanted to get off the ground. They have friends, they just are fun, extroverted buddy to be around, right? When they love other people, only when they love other people though, because this is Gemini and Venus, right? So if you ain't in your like heart chakra energy, you ain't gonna be like that. But when you are there in that way, you typically gain a lot through conversation. Through conversating with people about all kinds of shit, man. Not just not talking to people. You be around people, you talk to them about their lives. You're you know really engaged in conversation with people. About what you've seen, about what you heard. Letting people know kind of where your mind's at, and then figuring out where their minds are. If they're even willing to be a person you would come back to talk to on a regular basis. Because you as a person, you value communication. You love communication, right? That's important in your life, right? And it's not just important; it's something that you're a jokester too. Sometimes, man. People love that about you. You tell jokes about other people, or say shit about other people, and maybe you're turning it in on yourself because you're an introvert, and you're like you're playing games that way. And people like you for that. You make yourself look like a fool sometimes. Basically, you're able to laugh at yourself sometimes, and people actually respect that and like that about you. And even that you're a fool. It's funny because it's like you're not foolish. You're actually a smart person. And you're willing to have serious conversations too. But you're also about like we don't gotta be so serious all the time. We gotta have fun and laugh and all that. I like bringing those kind of um, things out of people. Making people laugh, making people smile, shit like that. Through conversation. And being around people a lot more. That's where you shine. That's where people like that about you when you're trying to like make plans with people to go out with them and do things with them. That's when they like you a lot. When you're not doing that, they probably don't fuck with you. But if you take the steps, and you're like making an effort to like conversate with people and get to know people, that's when they like your friends are like, okay, maybe we should go and do this as some friends. We should go out on the weekend or something like that, or we can get together and we can hang out, that kind of thing. But you got to be the one as Venus and Gemini, because I have Venus and Gemini too, but not in the fifth house. So like you're gonna be, basically you're gonna be heard more, or they'll focus on what you have to say, because like they see you as a fun guy or girl. Your ideas are actually, worth listening to. They're, fun. Everybody's gonna have fun when you bring up something, because you're also somewhat also considerate of like how other people think in your friend group. So you're like, okay, we can, make sure everybody has fun when we go out to do what we do, that kind of thing. You present, things to people in a clear, concise way, so they're like, okay, yeah, we'll consider that, or we'll do that at some point, or we'll do that shit right now, you know, because they like being around you. You're funny, they love, talking to you, and that's how you are. As a person who has Gemini and Venus in the fifth house. Now, the next person is Cancer Venus in the fifth house. Cancer Venus in the fifth house, they have, a deep emotional connection to people, right? Whether that be their family, their, loved ones, that kind of thing. And so they like to, be around them. They like to, put into them. They like to know what's going on with, those people. Are you okay emotionally? But they also want you to be like that for them, because they have the decency to be like that for you. Are you feeling well today? Are you sick? Are you feeling like you can, handle, life outside of this? That kind of thing, outside of, just us being together, is like the world kind of, fucking with you right now, that kind of thing. They like to, know shit about the people they, actually spend time with. And they like take time to like ask about that kind of thing. Maybe your health, maybe your, um, how's life been treating you, and they really like to know about that, and they can like tell if you're lying and shit too. Sometimes, if they actually love you, and they actually see you, they can tell if you're like, lying about shit. If you're like just, you know, saying things are great, but when they ain't. And they can just like, because they have that intuitiveness about them. Even if they're not usually like that with you, they are, because it's like I care about the relationships I make in this life. I see their importance and impact of how my past shaped me into the person I am. That's how this Cancer Venus thinks, right? But I did say that there's the negative side of, other people ain't so caring, and they can like other people can move on quickly from like the past. You might dwell on the past too much, but also like people like you for that. See, because it's in the fifth house, right? So people more so like you for that kind of thing, because the way you approach it is like, you know you were acknowledging, like, yes, this happened in the past, but like now we are here, and then now where do we go from here? That kind of thing. You know, you are more of a past driven type of person when it comes to like love and shit. You remember, so like you can remember all the fucked up shit that somebody's done to you and still be around them, right? But what you got to realize sometimes is that those people that you're with are not as caring as you are about the past. They're more so focused on the future or the present. And you are important to them, believe it, because sometimes you do gotta like let them know and shit, that like that happened before, and like it helps them recognize like patterns that they might not have caught on to about themselves. Like they've been just going, and then they don't realize, where they're going wrong and shit, right? You can actually, enlighten them to that as this Cancer Venus, because you're like, I love you, I know about you, time and time again I've seen you, and when you're around these people you typically are like this, and when you're interacting with these people you're typically like this. They see shit like that, you know Maybe you need to hang out with me a little more. The person with Cancer and Venus, because they like that deep connection to their loved ones. They like to have their loved ones close. They like to be that supportive role for them. They don't really care about other people doing it. A little bit clingy a bit, but sometimes they can understand too if they're like wiser and older. They'll be the ones to step back and be like, I'm the one. Like if this Cancer Venus knows that they're in a negative state, they don't want to put that on like their loved ones. So they'll be the ones to step back and be like, I'm the one in the wrong. I'm the one who's I need to take a couple you know days to myself and then come back, because I don't want to be the one influence you that way. Because Cancer does do that kind of shit. And like when you love somebody though, this is somebody, this you could be a Gemini and have this placement. The way you fucking just talk to people, and you're in a negative state. You're just like, man, I gotta like not fuck with you right now. I gotta come back at a later time. I just don't want to bring that negative bullshit around somebody I care for and love. And then you want that in return in response for your loved ones. Sometimes that don't come, but you're also wise from this. You learn over time that you are somebody who's like that, but that's why they come to you. They come to you because you understand that people are more than just people you talk to and other things. They came from something. They had to overcome some shit to get here. And that's kind of important to you. And the shit you've been through with them, more like that, right? And people appreciate you for that. Now, the next sign is Leo, Venus in the fifth house. You definitely are fucking like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. I am this guy. I am this girl. I am this. I'm that. And it's like you actually do, and you do love yourself, and you do love to have fun with people. And like people love to have fun with you. They do. They like your positive attitude towards yourself. They like the way you present things, and the way you want to um, go about entertaining people. They love you for that. And they always know you too. They know you. Like, like don't ever. And this is for this person. Like, don't ever think somebody don't know you. Don't think they don't know you, or like, because like you can also get upset when somebody you like ain't around. But you just got to remember, they just want to do something else. And, they'll come back because they know about, what I like and what I do. Because you're loud about it. You're loud, you're proud about it. You're also very creative, with, things. So, like, I like to say with Leo, right? They like to, like, when they, like, to entertain something, they like to, like, focus on that and get the most out of that. So, like I said last week, okay, let's say that somebody likes, an anime, a certain anime though. It's not just one anime. Um, we'll say that this person likes Dragon Ball Z. All right. I know Dragon Ball Z is like whatever, to some people, but some people actually love it, right? So this person likes Dragon Ball Z. They like go in on that. Like they make everything about that fun. So like other people when they talk about Dragon Ball Z, right? You're like, oh man, I don't think I like it. But the way they deliver it, the way they present it, the way they talk about it, it's like, damn, I actually like watching. I think I might like watching Dragon Ball Z. I think I might like to read the manga. Because they like dive into it, and they like really make the most of it, and other people can't do that, and they can't because they're not as creative, and like they can't pull people in that kind of way, and this person can do that, you know and then then you could be really hurt if people are like not around and shit, but you also know what I know too, that you're like always talking about it. You're being seen too. You'll let yourself be known to people. You're extroverted when you love something. You like to talk about it. You like to be loud about it. You have to show that, extra energy, you have that pizzazz there, right? Like maybe you are making videos about that, right? And you have this placement, right? And of course, people know you for that, and they love you talking about that. They love being around you talking about it. Um, and like when they bring up like people who talk about Dragon Ball Z, you're somebody that they name drop. Like probably the first name they name drop because of like how you present it and how creative you are when you present it, that kind of thing. And you get recognition for like that kind of thing. People love being around you. People love chatting you up. The bitches like you, the guys might like you. Depending on if you're a female. Females who have this placement are a little more out there. They're a little more like showy of themselves. Maybe not physically, but they still show like, oh hey, I like this kind of thing. This is my kind of hobbies. I like that kind of stuff. And what I mean by and this person likes Dragon Ball Z, but like after a while, they're still somewhat open, right? Because like Leo's a fixed sign. So what do we know about fixed signs? We know that they are not always willing to change. But Leo, out of all the fixed signs, is more willing to adapt to change, and it's because they like need that the people around them. So like after some time, once they've talked about Dragon Ball Z, thoroughly, and got the most fun out of it. They're like, yeah, I could expand my, horizons. I could dive into like One Piece a little bit. Like, tell me about this One Piece, and then like, they start getting into One Piece, and they get attached to a character, and they're like, oh, so and so who talks about Dragon Ball Z is now into One Piece because they were listening to Darius the Green Angel, and they like Darius the Green Angel too. Shit like that. That ends up happening. But people know about you and people like being around you. So if like somebody's not there right now or whatever, don't take that shit too hard. They know about you. You're loud about it. You're talking to people. You're talking to other people, so don't let that fuck with you too much. Because you're still gonna have fun. You're still gonna be the life of the party. You're still gonna be the center of you know the attention. When it comes to the things you love. That kind of thing. Now, and also for all those signs that I talked about, they may have kids too, by the way. And this person probably does too. But Venus in Virgo, that's in detriment, right? Venus in Virgo is in detriment because they like to like pick everything apart and they're very skeptical about shit, right? These people, they like things to be in order. They like things to be a certain way. When it's in the fifth house. But see, since it's in the fifth house, people appreciate you for that kind of thing. Your hardness, your toughness, your ability to like call shit out, like and you see a mistake, you like let them know. And it's like out of you actually, because this is Venus or Venus in Virgo, right? So you're doing it because you love that person. Now it's in detriment though because you do that kind of thing a little too much sometimes, right? Where you are nitpicking like every single situation, but ultimately like people like you though for that. They respect you for that. They actually do because it's in the fifth house, so they respect you for it. They know you as that kind of guy or that kind of woman. He or she, if they like care about you, they're gonna let you know all kind of shit like where you're fucking up and like where you're need to improve. They're gonna be a little more um, they'll criticize you a little more, but it's all out of love. They want to see you improve. They know that they themselves they put everything into the things they do, and they pick up on this thing. They want you to be similar. They want you to want to improve yourself in that kind of way. Think a little more. Pay attention to the small things more in life. Because when you die and you go somewhere, and this is the key here, right? Because this is Virgo. You want to leave that legacy. That's who you were. You weren't that person who half-assed shit. You were the person who like did their best every time. Like it didn't matter what the fuck it was. You know, you did your best. You let it all out there and shit. That kind of thing. And that's why they do it. That's where that really comes from. And I know that about you people. But you only do that though for the people you love. You don't do that shit for just anybody. You don't just run up on people and start doing that. Like even if you see something, you just keep it to yourself, and you will like tell somebody that you love, like I don't want you to be like that person over there. They got their, hair all chopped sideways and shit. You don't want to present yourself that way. You don't want your you don't want your hair like Atsushi from Bungo Stray Dogs all chopped. You gotta have shit lined up and other things at least. You don't want that. They'll let you know, but and they'll use that. That's let that be an example of like what not to do, that kind of thing. And they might seem like very, I don't know, overbearing maybe, or too. I wouldn't say aggressive, but it's like you feel like they're confining you, but it's really not them confining you. It's like this person is just trying to get you to think more about things, and maybe you don't like to think a lot about shit because your mind don't work that way. But you respect them because they're around and they're able to pick up on your mistakes and other things, and you rely on them for that. And that's why the people who like you, Venus and Virgo, they like you because you are the one who does that. They don't have anybody else that does that shit. Who's like a parent and can be like, man, you need to fix this kind of shit about yourself. And you can just see it right away because you focus on little details about people. you know. But it's your friend and shit. It's your lover. So like you see them more consistently. So you'll tell them, but you won't do that for just anybody. And you may even like present that to them in conversations when things go wrong in a relationship. You know, and they just don't get it. But that's just how you always be and how you are. You know. But ultimately, they like you because you don't have that shit. You do things, and when you do things, you do it to the best of your ability. Now, the next sign is Libra, Venus in the fifth house. Now, this person's a shattered box too. They talk to anybody, and they would talk to anybody. They like to initiate conversations. That's what Cardinal Wind does. They like to initiate conversations. So they somewhat start shit too, but when in its purest form, or when they're doing it out of actual love, they actually don't mean anything bad by it. See, you know, let's use this as an example. I like using this as an example for them. These people just have it in them to like if they're in a group and they have friends, right? And they're like, they'll try to get other people involved. I don't know, but that person looks down over there. I'm gonna go see what's up with them. If they're cool enough to like bring into our like little friend group or not. They're the ones who are actually like taking the steps to do it. They may ask their friends if they want to like you want me to go talk to this person and see if he's cool to like fuck around with, or if she's cool to like be in this group. you know I'll go talk to her and see what's going on. And they do that kind of thing. Whereas other people would just like not do that kind of thing, or just like ignore that person. They would actually take steps forward to like go see what the fuck's going on. And they do shit like that, right? you know and especially if they like feel compelled to do it, like they're like, oh man, I don't want to see that person over there alone and sad. I want to go see what's up with them. So they do, and they ask them some questions, and they do that kind of thing. And people like that too, because sometimes that person is lonely. Like sometimes they are, sometimes they ain't though. And you're doing a bit too much, but you're showing that think about people. You are considerate. And people like that about you. That's the main thing they like about you. You're considerate, and you also are calm, cool, and collected when you're speaking from the heart. I want to tell you this, and don't take it the wrong way. Like you use those kind of phrases when you're talking to people from the heart. You're like, hey, don't take it the wrong way. And then you lay the facts on them and other shit, and then you might be the one to like give them the bad news first and leave them with like the good news last. That kind of thing, because you believe in like not leaving shit on bad terms. And you can lay the like fucked up shit on them in a way that's like cool. And that's why people like you too. But how to like really like conversate and get your points across to people. And you can really talk to anyone. You know, of course, you like talking to like your friends and your loved ones more, and you like to know what's on their mind a bit more. you know, but you have that about you, and like it's the fact that you can like you could probably like stand up for somebody too. So like somebody who doesn't like to talk, let's say you have a friend or you know, like what do you want me to say to these people, you know, and you're like that person who like tells those people for those people, you know, you're like an advocate, like like for communicating with other people, you know, either that or you're then telling people to be more like you in that way, you know, when you start to like teach people like they have to do that shit for themselves, you know, because like sometimes you get burned out of from shit like that, you know, you don't mind doing that kind of thing, you don't mind speaking up for somebody else or whatever, but you can't be doing that shit all the time for this person, you know, and after some time you'll probably be like, you know, hey man, like how about you just, you know, go do that shit yourself, or how about you, you know, do it, you know. I don't want to be that like middleman or middle lady that tells this person something and then they're bitching at me about, you know, whatever, when you could have just told them yourself, you know, and said it from your heart, you know. And you got to do that, you know. Sometimes you got to let people know, you know, you're not their errand boy or their errand girl. You don't need to run around and talk to people like that, you know. You're already doing that for yourself. You're already trying to know what's on people's mind for yourself. But then you know, these people are like, go tell this person this, go tell this person that, you know, because they know you to be somebody like that, a social butterfly, things like that. And you don't mind doing it. That's the thing. Sometimes you don't mind doing it. But sometimes you gotta speak up and let them know. With that being in the fifth house, you know, people like you because you're considerate of other human beings. You think about them. You know, other people don't, but you do. You take some time to, you know, think, you know, what's this person going through, or you know, is this person like cool to be around? Is, you know, all kinds of things just about people. And like, you don't just think about it. You have those questions, and then you approach them, and you know, actually have a conversation. That's what they like. That part. But be cool on the corner. I got Scorpio, Venus in the fifth house next. So Scorpio, Venus in the fifth house. These people love to, man, have, you know, fun, if you know what I mean. So we know about Scorpio being a very sexual sign. It's just very intense sign. We'll say that. You know, it could be sex, and we'll say that, and other things. Scorpio is a sign that likes to keep secrets. So that's why it's also in detriment here. When you love somebody, you shouldn't tell them, or keep shit from them. But you are one who, as the Venus and Scorpio, who would keep something from them so it wouldn't destroy them. You know, that's how you would, like, you know, play that off or be whatever, because you also know like that people are, you know, they have their emotional states, and you know, people can get very emotional once they learn certain things. You know, and I don't even mean like with just shit like that, like, you know, okay, Scorpio's very sexual and they go around and they fuck all these people. I don't, you know, it's like not even just that kind of stuff, you know. That's, you know, an obvious thing, I guess, you know, and that is an obvious thing. But like, it could be like something not obvious, like maybe they like got into some like really bad, you know, business with some guys, and they just don't want to put that on you. You know, don't worry about it. I got this shit handled. You know, don't ask me about that shit. You know, it's none of your damn business. You know, and it ain't about, you know, sexual things. But then sometimes it leads into that, and then, you know, maybe that happens. But I don't know. I don't have this placement, and you know, people who have this placement, I understand that you're very secretive, but you're secretive for the sake of like there's certain, and like I kind of like can respect that about these Scorpios. Like I can, being a guy who's, you know, still somewhat introverted. You know, they're like, you know, some shit just has to like not be talked about. You know, you don't gotta be like so open about everything. You know, that shit's, you know, not needed. You know, sometimes it's just it's just understood, but you know, sometimes you just will never know. You know, and life be like that, and then they're kind of the sign that's like that, right? You know, you may never know what, you know, they were going through or whatever, and it was because this, you know, deep down they didn't want you to go through the negative feelings that they were going through, because they like know. See, if they like you, right, they know that the negative shit that they're going through is something that can impact you in a negative way. So they are not gonna fucking tell you shit out of, well, it's love. If it's Venus in Cancer or Venus in Scorpio talking to you, right? They'll continue to do whatever they're doing, and they will do that. But they don't want to like, put that on you because they don't want you getting out of sorts, too much. They seek, like, we know Scorpio to seek what they desire, seek death, their intent. And people who have that kind of thing, it comes when they're in love with somebody. They deeper invested into that kind of relationship. It's like more so for their loved ones and their people they're fucking with, like people they're fucking, and, maybe trying to have kids with, that kind of thing. They're more intense with those people. More, those people get to see a darker side of them. But it's also can work in ways of the secrecy. They're not telling them everything, but they're not telling you shit out of, they want to protect you. So they give you what you need to know, and that's all you need to know. That's it. You don't need to know all that other shit. I can respect them for that, actually. Me personally. Well, at least the guys, anyways. Not, you females shouldn't do that. But, that's just my personal thing. But, if you have that placement there, I get it. You don't want me to, or anybody to feel some type of way about, what happened to you in the past or whatever. And like, oh, that really, sucks or whatever. I didn't know that. And, because then it starts to be one of those things that, you're bringing the mood down, or, it's turning something that could have been positive to something negative. And you're just putting, your own shit onto somebody else. And again, Scorpio is more of a not so upfront type of thing. The energy's intense still. And I know what that means. It's not something that's loud or anything, but it still is. Something that's not heard, but still heard. People who are more, have higher EQ and know of that kind of thing, know about that. Anyways, we got Sagittarius Venus in the fifth house. Sagittarius Venus in the fifth house. You are a fun-loving person to be around. People like to, chat you up. You like to chat people up. You like to, be adventurous. You like to go and try new experiences. You won't let anything slow you down, that kind of thing. But only when you love yourself and when you like, listen to yourself. When you decide to listen to yourself, and it's like, and why I say that is because, you could literally be, a let's say you can be a Libra with this placement. You can be a, Aquarius with this placement. You could be a Capricorn or a Scorpio with this placement. And you just like have to do this thing, and like you like let people know, like I wanna go snowboarding, or I wanna climb mountains. I want to get into this kind of thing. I want to do this, and like you telling them this shit, and they're like, they might try to shut you down and shit, but deep in your heart of hearts, you're like, I gotta do this thing. I want to fuck with these kind of people. I want like you come from let's say you come from a type of like peoples that are like more closed off, and they want you to like fuck with the people in your own race, and you don't like. I want to fuck with this kind of person. I want to fuck up, like you're a white boy that wants to fuck a black girl, or you want to fuck a Asian or something like that, or you're a black nigga that wants to fuck with Asian or something that's different. And and it's not just that; it's other things too. You want to like travel abroad and learn about other people. You like at some point you're not gonna like let that shit fuck with you. You're not a kid. You're not gonna let that shit fuck with you. You're gonna just do it. You're just gonna make that shit happen. I want to go to Thailand. I want to do this. I want to do that. You're gonna make it happen. You ain't gonna let that shit slow you down. Like other people's opinions and that kind of shit slow you down. And people like that about you. You might not even have a like stable lifestyle in the means of like other people, but like even through that, you're still a like positive person. even through that, like you could be like, in your broke days, or in your, coming up days or whatever, and like you don't have all this shit, but you're still happy and you're still fun and you're still positive about shit, so people still like you, and then when you do make it, they still, know you and shit, right? And because you like always, happy, loud, proud about you, but you also, let people know, if they're like, um, doing too much, like they're trying to like keep you from doing something, and that's gonna piss you off, right? I need to do this kind of thing in my life, but you want to like get in my way and tell me I can't fucking do it, that kind of thing. I appreciate the da 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 da, but I gotta do this, and I'm gonna do it, and that's how you are. And people who like really like you respect you for that, because they like themselves. They're like, oh man, I should be a little more like that. If I need to do something, and it's for my life and it's what I gotta do, I gotta just do it. I can't give a fuck about what other people think. It's me. I just gotta live my life and do it, but also see the positives, and actually learn to grow too. Because like when you're doing these new things, you learn that okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but I still had to actually experience and go do that thing to learn that I wasn't made for that kind of activity or thing, you know snowboarding or mountain climbing, or whatever the fuck it is that you want to do, and you just do it, and then maybe it was like the wrong time, so then you go back and do it later, and then you find out that you really weren't for it, or whatever, whatever the fuck it might be for you. But the main thing here is that you ain't gonna let people slow you down from, living the life and fun, adventurous life that you want to have. And then people like that you do that, and you like that you try to, seek new things. And it's like always a new adventure being around you. So like your true friends, and people who truly love you, dick, being around you. And you could be like a Scorpio, a Capricorn, it could be a Libra, Aquarius with this placement. So, anyways, we got the next sign. We got Capricorn, Venus in the fifth house. This person likes to, they like to make sense, but they also like they have that sense of like urgency. So they love like going after what they're ambitious about. So they have a goal, a real goal. It's like they're building towards something. I want this kind of house. I want to have these kind of cars. I want to have these kind of money in the bank. That kind of thing. And they're focused towards that kind of thing. People like love them and gravitate towards them because of that. And it's like these people actually make sure they get their results and other things. So then it's like, I have a man or a friend that's a girl over here who's like, really going hard, and they're making their business grow. They're making their, making sure their money comes up. You know, I want to learn something from them because they, make sure they like stay away from the bullshit. They sacrifice, fun, for that kind of thing, and they do. And that's the thing. Sometimes some of these people do, do other things, but typically, like, they don't, though. Because, like, they don't. Like, Capricorn Venus, Capricorn energy in general, these people are more disciplined. They're more, hardworking, career-focused type of people, But if you have it in Venus, right, it's in the fifth house. They understand you to be this hardworking, stick to it. Don't play by like that bullshit of, you can work and play kind of thing. That's more of like a Taurus thing, not a Capricorn thing. You know, they like when they lock in, they like to like actually lock in and make sure, like they if they have to like cut you off, they will. For the sake of, if I have to like, fuck around with you too long, I could go down the path that you're going down, and that's not what I'm trying to build in my life. You know, so they'll be your friend, but like you respect them if you're actually their friend, right? Why do you respect them still? Because you like that they can set boundaries for themselves and be like, oh, well, I can't go to that party today. I'm trying to like build my, wealth, or do this or do that. I got other things going on. They know that your friends, if you're a Capricorn Venus, or your lover or whoever, it's important. Like they know that you're a person who's like driven in that kind of way, and then you're also an example of what they should like strive to be like, and you're that example of what they strive to be like. So they respect you for that. Okay, they might be hurt or whatever, but you don't really give a fuck. And they, they might be initially hurt or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's like, they, weren't trying to, get anything accomplished that was, meaningful in that kind of way. Building wealth, you know, having all the cars you want, having the home you want, having the business you want to provide, services for other people, that kind of thing. Moving up the career ladder, that kind of thing. And you are focused more so on that shit. And people respect you for that and they like you for that. And they, come to you for advice on those kind of matters. Once they like your friends start to, get those points where they want to like actually, build a life for themselves, they're coming to you. They're asking you, who should I talk to about getting into this kind of business, getting into these kind of, or investing in these kind of companies or these kind of companies. They're asking you about that. Capricorn and Venus, because you were the one who were always, about their shit. No matter what was going on, you might have like gone to parties earlier on and shit or whatever. Or like, you go to parties, but then you cut yourself off. You're like only 5 minutes, or like not 5 minutes, but like, 15 minutes, guys, and I gotta be out of here. I gotta do other things. You might do that, but more than likely you're just gonna say no, not today, type shit. That's most likely what you're gonna do. But they respect you for it because of the man or woman you are, and like the things you're trying to accomplish or worth accomplishing. Even though they're gonna, go off and do that kind of thing, you're gonna just, stick there and grind on some other shit. But they respect you for it. Your friends do, and then they try to, emulate certain, qualities, aspects of you, and adapt that into their life, adopt that into their life. And then like you're also a person who can like, tell somebody like, next steps that they can have, like real practical steps that they can take in their life if they have questions and shit. And you can just tell them right away, like, well, if I were you, I would do this kind of thing. Da, 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 da. If you're trying to start a business, you lay it on them, how to do it, and that's how you do it. And if you don't do it, then that's on you. But that's what I do, that kind of thing, and you're good like that. And they appreciate it for that. So the next person is Aquarius Venus in the fifth house. So Aquarius Venus in the fifth house. This person likes to, talk to. They like to run around and talk. They do, they have shit on their mind and they like to, ask questions. They have to, see, they like to go against the norm sometimes. Or if it ain't that, they, can be a little bit unpredictable at times. With who they're hanging out with. Maybe they're hanging out with, they have friends, right? And they, hang out with their friends and shit like that. But then it, comes to a point in time where they're like, fuck this. You guys are kind of lame. I'm going to hang out with this person, now. And that's the person you guys think I wouldn't fuck with, or, you don't like those people because they do this and do that. But I'm going to see what's up with them because I think these people are actually, worth talking to, or this person's worth being around. This person knows about anime and astrology, that's interesting, to some degree. I want to see what he's talking about. You'll be a person who would like try to do that kind of thing because, if people tell you, this isn't how things are supposed to be. Things are supposed to be like this, and it's only supposed to be like this. Your mind works in a way that goes against that, and it ain't like you're always going against it, right? But it's like you question it. So, okay, you say we can't do this, you say I can't do this, but why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And you question things, you look into, what other things could work instead of that. You're saying I shouldn't go out and talk to these kind of people. You know, let's say it's like this. You are in a group of, this is a guy, right, who has Venus and Aquarius in the fifth house. You're telling me I can't fuck with these bitches because they'll fuck my life up. When really, you're thinking too much about me being with her, and you don't like that. You don't like the fact that I'm be fucking that. So you're trying to convince, you would try to convince me otherwise and keep me in a box. You know, those kind of things. It could be something as small as that. And like, you would have to tell your friends fuck you and shit like that. But like, your true friends are like not like that. They're, you know, it might have came off that way, right? But really they're just saying, you know, don't let that bitch, you know, drag you down to her level. But they ain't saying it that way. They're saying it in a kind of like homo gay kind of way. And then you're like, oh man, I can't fucking listen to you no more. You know, but they're still your friend because guess what? They like that you stood up for, you know, what you wanted. You let them know that that shit was fucked up and that they were trying to like confine you to like these kind of things when really it's not like that. The possibilities are endless. And as long as I can, you know, make a plan or, you know, put the plan into action myself, I can make that shit happen. You know, so fuck you for trying to, and you tell your friends that and everything. You know, you don't box people in. You don't box me in. You know, and your friends respect you for that. You know, I might, you know, certain friends might be more emotional and sad and shit, like, oh my God, you're not around me kind of thing. But like, ultimately, if they're wise or whatever, they're like, they'll come back around and they're still my friend, so and so. You know, they would never let anybody confine them into a box because they realize that kind of thing. They'll never let anybody, you know, trap them in a box per se. So I know if I can't do it, then they wouldn't allow other people to do it. So that's still my friend. That's my, you know, friend so and so. That girl or that guy is, you know gonna do them, but they'll come back around when the time's right. You know, they help me actually, you know, think a little bit more about, you know, things in my life. You know, am I, you know, boxing myself in, you know, because I want to like listen to these people who tell me I can't do this and tell me I can't do that. You know, in reality, I actually can do the things that I want to do, but I've allowed these people to like box me in and keep me inside my head and shit like that. You know, but it was your friend, you know, with the Aquarius Venus that was telling you, you shouldn't allow those kind of things to, get you down. You know, still, think about things, but don't think the way they want you to think. You know, if you come to the same conclusions as them, that's right, right? You don't just take it and go with what they're telling you. You know, think for yourself. You know, and that's what they like about their friends who are Aquarius Venus people. You know, they're kind of, creative too. They are creative. They like to, come up with new ideas and present them to people. You know, and people like them for that too. Now, the next person and the final person, right, is the Venus in Pisces in the fifth house. Of course, this person is the romantic, the people pleaser, the like all that kind of thing. You know, romantic, a pleasure to be around. Um, have a very like mystical kind of aura to them too. You know, very dreamy. You know, when you're with them, it's like you're in another world. It's like that's the kind of like energy they have. You know, they pull you into another place. You know, because they're very creative. Like let's get that out of the way. They're very creative and they're very um, comfortable to be around. You know, welcoming too. Um, and they also have compassion too. Like that's probably one of the like hooks that hooks you in, is that their compassion. They consider your emotional state, not just what you're thinking about, but like what are you feeling right now? What kind of are you hurt? Are you damaged? You know, that kind of thing. Are you feeling good right now? Are you willing to participate in what I got going on. You know, I'm, open to doing certain things. I like to, you know, seize opportunities as they, arrive in my life too, as this Pisces, Venus does, right? And then that comes with relationships. They've been in relationships, right? But when they like really love somebody, they dive in. They make sure their loved ones are okay, their emotional states not too disrupted or whatever. You know, but they could also be the reason why their lovers are a little out of sorts. But they would understand that too if they're like the person who has this Venus in Pisces, right? They make sure to communicate with their partners when necessary. Um, but they care about pleasing their partner and also pleasing other people. They can make a person um, feel like they've been heard and not just been heard, but like they've been satisfied or they've been saved by this person. With Venus in Pisces, they try to be like these heroes and shit. They try to be like kind of heroic, which is like a fun thing, but it's like that mystique that we ain't gonna sugarcoat it. It's like an illusion they put on. They're not really saving you necessarily, but like sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they actually do save you. But they're really good at manipulation and that kind of thing. They can make you feel like you are being saved or whatever by them and by what they got going on, when really it's just them helping you escape from whatever negative shit for the time being, and it's not even like an actual fix. But you'll think it is though in the way they present shit. They're really good at presenting themselves the right way. They're really good at seizing the opportunities the right way. But if they actually love you and shit though, they'll actually make sure they go all the way, and they do save you, and they do make sure they're showing compassion towards you as the person they love. And they do that. They actually do when they love you, for real. And are willing to sacrifice their time for you. Essentially, is what love is, I guess. And communicate when needed and shit like that. But that is something they like about you, and you're very creative. So you're into the arts, you're into poetry, music, that kind of thing. And it's like very like entertaining too. It's like you're already into like all that shit to some degree. So like you're into anime, and then you're into like rock or like rap, or and then you're into like other kinds of paintings. Like maybe you're into like goddamn, maybe you're into that weak ass shit like William Shakespeare and Macbeth and shit like that. But that's these people who have Venus and Pisces who are like that, right? But your friends really like you because you're a compassionate, caring person, and you're willing to do different things with the people you love. Try different things out. As long as you're doing it with them, that's what matters. So that is Venus in the fifth house, as told by Darius the Green Angel. Be cool, calm the corner, and let me know what you think about the fifth house, Venus in the fifth house, in the comments. Natal reading is $350. That's your natal reading, everything, your sun sign, moon sign. The houses they lie in. The aspects that are come in contact with certain planets. If it's a squared relationship between two planets, sextile relationship, all that. $350. And it also comes with your numerology reading in it too. That comes with that. That's why it's $350. So buy one off of me for $350 and be cool upon the corner. I got One Piece coming out today too, so don't worry, I got a One Piece video.